This is a conversation with Richard Fitzgerald. He is the founder and CEO of Augustus Media, popularly known for creating digital media platforms like Lovin Dubai, Lovin Saudi, and SMASHI TV. In this conversation, we discuss the state of media in the region. We dissect every single thing you need to know to start and run media platforms like Lovin Dubai and SMASHI successfully, the type of content I want to create, the philosophy of the content, how to identify your audience, how to build an audience, the revenue breakdown, the media regulations that exist in the region. We also cover the differences between a content platform and a streaming service, and then what personality traits make successful founders. This is no time. If you like what you see, then do hit subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify, rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. This project takes a lot of my time, money, and efforts. If you'd like to see it continue, please consider making a donation on Patreon, or you can join as a member on YouTube. You can buy super thanks on YouTube, or you can buy gifts on Instagram Reels. If not through monetary channels, then do consider sharing these episodes, leaving your likes and comments. All forms of engagement, they really go a long way. For other forms of love and support, you can follow this channel on Instagram or Twitter, or follow me personally. And now it's no time.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
In 2009, you were working in a digital agency in Dublin, and you were, in your words, completely bored. You felt everything was happening in London, football, concerts, art galleries, you name it. So you decided to move to London. But when you moved there in 2010, 2 years before the Olympics, you've said that you felt like you had missed the emergence of the youth culture by almost 50 years. London was probably the place to be in the 60s with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, the counterculture movement, psychedelics, rock and roll. Just like how maybe Paris was the place to be more than 100 years ago during the times of Picasso. But you've said in a previous interview that when you moved to Dubai in 2012, you felt like you were in the midst of it, that Dubai was the place to be. And you've said that when people look back in the future, they will know that Dubai was the place to be during those decades. So I want to start here. Why do you think so? How do you describe Dubai? And then why do you think it is the place to be at the moment?
Firstly, thank you for having me on No Time, the show. You said that a lot more articulate and eloquently than I think, but you did summarize my thoughts and my views of that. Not necessarily that I was chasing zeitgeist or chasing a place to be, but I think for ambitious people, for young people, for people who want to explore, whose minds want to learn, who want to interact, or I think people who think about the way the world is. I think those cities and those reasons and choices play into it. So maybe they did for me. Why has Dubai? I think if we, the language I used before and the language I might use now might change. But if we zone out, if we dial out, some of the narratives that have been used lately, or this sort of shift, from globalization, like this economic shift from unipolar to multipolar worlds, and meaning, whether it's the BRICS or whether it's emerging markets, but meaning that cultures and economics and peoples can thrive in different ways nowadays. And I think the emerging Gulf cities, and if I zoom out and zoom straight back in, are significant. I think what's happening here isn't to be dismissed. And if we think of this as the beginning of a new century, and if stories are going to be written about the 21st century, then these are some of the things that you would think about. And the world has a history. Obviously, the world has a history, but cities have histories, and cities have stories, and cities have journeys. And I think at the turn of the first century AD BC, the biggest city in the world was Alexandria. And ChatGPT might correct me, or any book might correct me, but I think it was maybe 300 or 400 or 500,000 people lived there, and that's the most populous place on earth. And then before then Baghdad, which was a circular built city, they all have stories, they all have comings and goings. We named our company after, in one sense, after an emperor from a period of history, and that was Octavian, Augustus, Caesar in Rome, and they had a history, they have a story. So different cities play different parts in certain times. I also have said on some podcasts that when I was in London and I told my bosses that I was moving to Dubai, they sort of said, why are you moving to a city with 2 million people, 2 or 3 million people? Now in 2025, where 3.91 will cross over to 4 at the end of the year in a city that's in a country that's over 10 million people. But that when I got off the plane on June 2nd, 2012, and when I made a little YouTube video and I spent that summer pitching for business in my agency that I was working for, I just realized, mainly by their makeup of being MENA, Middle East, North Africa, and being majority owned, although part of a global network, majority owned locally, not anymore, but they decided to carve out the region as MENA, and they had 12, 13 offices in 22 Arab League, Arabic speaking countries. And that was new to me, looking at the world like that in a sort of a makeshift continent with a populace with different things going on, with different stages of constitutions, of nationalism, of internet penetration, of, you almost have a first world and third world economies in the Gulf and wider region at the same time. So there's many different ways of like carving it up, but you can tell even by my convoluted way of answering, it means it's exciting, it's not boring, right? And then, there's different spiels on tourism of like, within 4 hours of Dubai, X billion people live and blah, blah, blah. Sure, like all these things sort of play into it. Melting pot of cultures, different demographics, different ambitions, different leadership, and many things. And, 13 years later, I'm not bored.
I'm glad you didn't pursue your childhood dream of becoming a football coach, because there's a lower chance you might have made it to Dubai if you had become a football coach. So I guess things work out in the end. Have you seen Dubai change over the last 13 years? Have you been privy to an evolution of culture? Or do you feel the core personality of the city has stayed the same apart from minor changes, which is to be expected with time?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the right person to answer these questions. I wouldn't say I'm an authoritative person on culture or city planning or things like that. From a Lovin Dubai and from a media point of view, it has changed. We've benefited from the fact that it's an exciting city. The narratives have evolved. I think the global perception of Dubai has changed, no doubt. No doubt. Even if I look at the media that we monitor daily, the narratives have changed. Dubai has become cool. Like whether, marketing people will take credit for it, but it's people who shape cities, and the people who moved here and the leadership and the economy kind of deserves a lot of credit for that. But on some level, you're going to have detractors and naysayers, but Dubai has become cool in a way that Saudi isn't in some way, yes. But yeah, way back when I was in the early noughties, when I would look at reality TV shows in Ireland and the UK, the OC in Orange County, Beverly Hills and all these places, and the Hamptons, and this idea of wealthy, rich young people and hip hop culture, converging. Like that's the image I got from Western mass culture, right? And I think with this multipolar world, and also with like that universal studio of Netflix, I think we're seeing a difference, right? Like some of it is strategic, some of it is planned, some of it's paid for, and some of it's organic. But Dubai certainly have a changed global perception. On the ground, has it changed? Yes, absolutely. I definitely think the first 3 years, I was just excited to be here and in the region. The region was sort of on one, especially the Gulf, economically from 2012 to 2015. Then there was, some people would say an unspoken about recession. It wasn't necessarily an unspoken about recession because technically we weren't in 2/4 of GDP decline, but globally there wasn't a media recession. So when oil prices were low and when property prices were low, the circulation of cash was lower. It just wasn't as thriving as much as it has done post-corona, post-pandemic. So, and then that's the third phase, right? Like that's sort of 2015 to 2020 was certainly a phase economically. there were some people leaving then. I think it's been transient, but this sort of post-pandemic phase could be described as boom in tourism, boom in property, boom in like millionaires deciding to relocate, but also, culturally, this sort of idea of planning for longer, people would always say that London or Paris was very transient. Like in my 20s in London, I would have met a lot of Europeans who didn't see London as UK. They just saw it as a thriving capitalistic cultural city, right? With theatre, with sport, with arts, with business. Many Europeans, many international European headquarters were in London. But no one would have ever said in the same way that it's a transient city as in, everyone's going to leave. And I hear of some people when they leave Dubai, they go, it wasn't for me. And that's cool. And that's fine. I get it. Like, sometimes I felt lonely or didn't fit in some cities, even home cities. But I don't think it's a case that it's a super transient city. However, in this sort of phase, I think it's even less so. And simply in terms of like owning property and that idea that, okay, we might have to renew visas, but more and more people are getting citizenship, this sort of long-term visa, this sort of security and planning. And the fact that the term that they use is third culture kid, but actually the demographic of the city, the people who were born here, people who grew up here, whatever phrase you put around it, it's just a lot more. I was one of those mercenaries who came over where there was an annual ticket in my salary, and people ask me for it now, and I kind of laugh. I kind of go, oh, okay, because where are you going to go home to, Barsha? Like, because people, this idea of like talent gap for me is just completely thrown out the water. Like the universities here, the talent here, especially in what we do, is just as good here as anywhere else. And I've proven it left, right, and center all the time. And you know it, like most people know it. Sure, there's specialties, and sure, there's industries that have more specializations in other parts because the revenue in that sector is higher, so it allows for more expertise. But that general talent pool, that young, bright mind is here. It's in the city. And, so we've designed a company and a recruitment culture to sort of play into that. We don't do back offices, kitchens. We don't bring in talent. And what I'm working on now is, trying to get more people through the ranks to senior leadership positions who grew up in Dubai, studied in Dubai, and worked for 10, 15, 20, 30 years in Augustus Media, because I think that makes us a stronger, more robust, indigenous, homegrown company. And, I think that literally by what I just said shows my view of how we view the city and the region and why this place has allowed that to happen.
You started this answer by saying you're probably not the best person. I think you're one of the best people to answer this question because you've had a pulse on the culture of the city every day and for over a decade. So it's some really valuable insights that you provided. Let's get to work. This entire conversation is structured as one giant thought experiment. The premise is I'm an aspiring entrepreneur and I want to start 2 media companies. One that is just like Lovin Dubai and one that is just like SMASHI. And I'm hiring you as my mentor. You're a seasoned veteran of the game. And with your help, I want to dissect every single thing that I should know to launch and run companies like these successfully. How does that sound?
Fine.
Okay, great. So first, let's start with a company that's just like Lovin Dubai. And the first obstacle that's in front of me is identifying the type of media company that I want to open. Every time when you talk about the Lovin brands or SMASHI, you describe them, Augustus Media, you describe them as modern media companies. As you can probably tell by looking at my face, I'm not the brightest light in the room, so these terms go all over my head. What does that mean? What is a modern media company and how is it different from a traditional old school media company?
Okay, I like this. What's the word that when you say simulation?
A thought experiment.
A thought experiment, fine, yeah, okay. Look, again, trying to start at modesty, but not to come across as a media scholar or historian. However, you've got media and mediums. And on the medium side, it's usually the distribution. It's usually the form that one consumes media. Like in a really basic like if you think of text, audio, and video and the printing press, if we think of the first newspapers, the printing press is late 15th century. The UK Times started in 1750. The New York Times and The Economist started in 1850. The Ottoman Empire banned the printing press for 100 years. One of the sultans brought it back, but controlled it. In this region, we sort of saw some printing presses in early 19th century, but the first one didn't make it to Riyadh until 1953. The first media law was written in Saudi in 1972. First Asharq al-Aswad newspaper in 1975, 200 years after, I think I said 1750, but 1775, 200 years after the UK. So that's the newspaper, print, books, printing press. Then radio was, early 20th century. And then you had TV about 1930s, color TV, 1950s, cinema, all this sort of stuff. So then, internet, 1994, 95, websites. I think a lot of the decision around websites and media companies were to do with what the website can hold. So a lot of TV stations, wherever you grew up, if you think of the website that the TV station that you had, it was largely a text website. Sky News, BBC had articles, but before they didn't have articles. Why would they? Because they were built in a cable era, or BBC before. But so yeah, the evolution of TV in 1970s, it became cable. Before then, it could only reach a country or a state. Then it could reach international with satellite. So it sort of evolves like that. And, then with the internet has evolved even more. And then the smartphone, this sort of amalgamation of text, audio, and video and social media. So we think of it, the medium, as this sort of internet, but the predominant drivers of the internet, I think I was speaking to a media exec recently, and they sort of said that, streaming they didn't really like the word streaming, but I feel like it's underrepresented and it's underserved, because I think it's a real driver now. Like everything is going to be streamed, and then that convergence of streaming of music and video. And, if we think of everything, if we think of airplanes and devices and cars and technology, like that sort of connectivity of streaming has a way to run, irrespective of head devices and things like that, and beyond the mobile phone. I think streaming is the real thing here. So then we think of that in terms of mediums and modern media. And why we called it modern media, we didn't call it a mobile first or a content. Like we literally called it a media company. And I met an entrepreneur recently, and he told me, you're limiting yourself by calling it a media company. You should call it a reach company. Then you can be a tech growth play, and you can be a unicorn. And I was kind of like, cool, but like, I don't see any problem with being a media company. Just like if I launched a legal services company or legal company in this day and age, it doesn't have to be a legal SaaS. It can be someone who understands, the internet and cybercrime and all the intricacies, all the things around IP and AI and rights in terms of the internet, right? So that's what when we say modern media, we sort of know that we're an evolution of a modern media company. And that kind of grounds us a bit. It kind of says, okay, we're not getting stupid high valuations. We're not over-promising. We're sticking in this media space, and we're an evolution of it.
Where's traditional media heading? Television, print, radio, newspapers. Do you think these will continue mutating over time into modern media? It'll just swallow them? Or do you think there will always be a market or an audience for traditional media, newspapers, television in the form that it originally existed in?
I think there'll always be a place for them, whether it's a market or an audience. And it's interesting, you stopped short when you said traditional media. You didn't include websites. And that's 30, 40 years ago. So, like, why not? Like, because I think websites are traditional media. And I think they've sort of died off a bit. In terms of market share and revenue and audience. So, we evolved, the first websites, the first sort of banner ad was 1994, 1995. That's when Google started. The term Web 2.0 was coined in 2004, and that's where the social networks, the iPhone was 2007, although no one had an iPhone in 2007. It was kind of 2009 and 10. So basically, the way I think of this thing is media always fragments, and the reason I answered it that way is because when does social media, which is 20 years old, become traditional media? In what way is AI taking over? And then at what point do you think that there's no audience for social media and there's no business model around it? So the way we like to see it is we've decided to be a digital company, a digital media company, but we can be a traditional digital company as well as one who lives on social media, as well as one who tries to make bets on streaming and other forms of media consumption in the future.
Okay. I've identified the type of media company I want to open. It's going to be a modern media company. Now, the next obstacle in front of me is identifying the type of content I want to create. And you've often said that all the Lovin brands are in the same tier as The Sun, TMZ, Lad Bible, Barstool Sports, maybe. It's been built around the Buzzfeed model or the Clickbait model. You've not tried to go international like the New York Times. You try to say local like a tabloid like the New York Post, maybe. There's a focus on growth hacking, wild content, memes, all of that. Once again, all these terms are going over my head. So I would love it if you can explain it to me. What is the philosophy of this BuzzFeed model or the Clickbait model? What are the defining traits of it?
I love how you said that New York Times was international and others aren't. But look, I could dispute that one. But going back to the point, you started by talking about content. And I think that's a good point to start with. In the last conversation, a topic we discussed was the medium in the modern media.
Right.
Now, if we talk about the media, like what type of media, what content, what stories, and the way we see it is like a media lens. What do you stand for? Is it around a demographic? Is it around a passion point? Is it around a city or a location? And then you can build brands around that. And what I feel is like media or content works well when there's a cohort of behavior or interest. So if someone's interested in a city like Dubai, you can have media around it. If someone's interested in a sport like football, you can have media around it. If someone's interested in a societal issue like female empowerment or environment, you can build media around it, or ethnicity. Or if there's, an interest in retail investors of startups, then you can build media around it. So I think that's a lot of the premise around this is like, what's the media lens? What cohorts are you, if you're looking for an audience, are you going to do media around something that no one really cares about? Like, are you going to build a media company based on, I shouldn't say no one really cares about, but are you going to build a media company based on such a niche? And there is a narrative out there that niches work, and they potentially do, right? But I think, but then you know what your niche is, and you know whether it's a mainstream media or a niche media, and that's also intentional. Like when you mentioned these reference points that I've used before, like tabloids, part of that is to sort of explain that I see this as mass media. I see this as populist mass media. Whether the tabloid term was coined by the English-Irish type guy who did the Daily Mail. Tabloid is something to do with France and whatever. I don't know what it is, but he got it in about 1905, 1906. And it was just shorter broadsheet. It was just shorter newspaper. So, and then it became to, based on content and how it evolved, it had other connotations. But there are people in the US now who founded modern media companies like Axios, Semaphore, Puck, even Politico, and these sort of innovators. Some of them have written books and trademark terms like smart brevity, short bullet points. Some people tell me in the region that people don't read. They do. Like you don't get rid of text. You just use it visually in a different way, right? Like you can consume text in bullet points and smart brevity in shorter time because the device that you're consuming on it, the space is smaller. It's not that we don't read. It's just the environment has changed. The time has changed. The speeds of consumption has changed. So going back to the point about choosing the media and choosing the content, I wouldn't necessarily answer the clickbait and the attention model in the same way as the media lens. I would say what we've done under Augustus Media said we want to be the modern media company of choice in Middle East and North Africa. we're going to do that with sub-brands. So if Unilever say they're going to do something and then their sub-brands have nothing to do with Unilever, they have, brands within brands. Like Apple has sub-brand strategy. We have a sub-brand strategy. We have 2 mass consumer brands, one called SMASHI, one called Lovin. Lovin is a Lovin's a horizontal brand, city horizontal. So we never do Lovin Sports, Lovin Food. We just do the city. It's in 22 cities across the region. 8 or 9 of them are doing well, alhamdulillah. And, the rest we want to grow. And then SMASHI, we designed it with verticals. So we decided to do SMASHI Business and 13 verticals, crypto, sports, things like that. We might evolve that in the future. I think one of the mistakes we made is we focus a lot on medium, on streaming and the subscription model and different things. And we called it a streaming service instead of calling it what it is, a content platform. And I like that you use that phrase, because if we can get the content platform right, and then you pick the mediums that people are going to be on over time, SMASHI Business is consumed not on the smart TV app. SMASHI Business is consumed as a podcast, as a newsletter, and vertical video on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, or Instagram. That's where it's consumed. But the media lens, the verticals is one part of it. Like we focus on SMASHI Sports, SMASHI Business, but the key lens, like what we decide, what makes it strong, is that tagline that makes sense to us, which is for the driven, the dreamers, the doers, to build a brand that resonates with a young cohort in the region who want economic prosperity, never mind what the Western world says about them. Like, it's that sort of, can you create heroes here? And is there a media brand that champions here, right? And Lovin does that too. Like, inshallah, when Saudi Arabia win a gold medal in the Olympics, they never have, is that going to be on Lovin Saudi, Balarabi, Lovin Riyadh, or SMASHI Sports? Probably all 3. But it might be done in a different vibe, in a different way. So that's what we've done. Now, if you're doing what you're doing here in this show, this is niche, but it's also relevant to that sort of driven dreamers do. So it can become mass. It hits that spot, depends on your demographic. And it's also in that sort of medium area of podcast, video, digital consumption, and then, the shortcuts as well. So basically you're doing the same thing. Like, rather than someone, and I know you did it for an experiment, but you're actually already, behind the camera, you're already doing both of those things. And, I know you started like 4 or 5 years ago, but this is how the modern media companies are happening now. Content-led creators with a thesis, producing things where people are consuming content. And so that's what I mean. Like, maybe some of the things that we've done have already become traditional, and how do we keep up with the change as well? And then why have we decided to stick with brands rather than have creators as the lead on it as well? And that's just a choice.
A lot of things to unpack here. I'm going to park aside the questions about SMASHI. We're going to cover the economics of it. Also, you spoke about identifying your cohort or your audience. We'll also get there, but I want to take a digression. Why wasn't there a pan-Arab media company before Augustus, or many of them? Why was it splintered into so many different local media companies? Why didn't a big player like Rupert Murdoch ever enter this region?
Well, I mean, was there a pan-Arab European country? Like, although every region is different, and people do say that Arabic is one language, but in media it's not. Like, the Egyptian music is different to Khaliji music, is different to Levant, Lebanese music. Same with shows. So there were pan-Arab companies, like NBC out of London and Saudi was pan-Arab.
Right.
And one of the reasons why it worked is because it put English Western content on NBC2 with subtitles. So all Arabs thought it was speaking to them. And but the pan-Arab shows, and I'm not, again, like I moved here in 2012. I knew nothing really about the region. Like, embarrassingly how little I knew. But so one factor is that content is different in countries. Like, people consume things differently. And then the other factor is economics, but also the development of media. Like, I alluded to it with the printing press as a reference, but media is quite new here. The Western world falls back on that 1770 something constitution with numbers of amendments, like, as if that's a global constitution. And that's, again, we're moving away from that unipolar idea because that doesn't exist here. That First Amendment linked to media doesn't exist. And why should it? So again, media, what media is, if we were in the Ottoman Empire and we were, then we wouldn't have the internet here, right? If they banned the printing press, they would ban the internet. Is the internet banned? No. Like, are there some foreign titles that need licenses and have regulation? Yes, sure. But so vice versa, So like Lovin Dubai isn't accessible in Canada on Facebook, right? Yeah, due to some local, any title from here is not just us, but so
what's the reason? Why?
I don't know. They have some law, something to do with licensing and publications or whatever. Not that we insulted anyone in Canada, but no, it's not just us. It's just sometimes when people travel, they say, did you know about this? And then I look into it, and it's some law that they have over there. I think Australia has the same, something to do with revenue and platforms. I'm not sure. But basically, Rupert Murdoch tried to come here indirectly. He had some real estate stuff. He was actually indirectly involved in the early property finder thing out of Australia. But he was with Walid bin Talal, with Ratana, and there was something on there. However, you think of how Rupert Murdoch saw the world, and how he evolved from Australia to the UK to the US. It's very English. It's very first world. There's not many emerging market bets there. Yes, there was a Hotstar India thing, kind of JVs for a while. And even that wasn't a full commitment. Why global media moguls didn't enter here, economics, advancement of media, and then government ownership, not even censorship, just government control of TV stations, which is still very much prevalent. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think it harms that sort of consolidation. Why do we have, I was watching the Tour de France yesterday on the Abu Dhabi TV application. It's excellent, right? Arabic commentary, the feed from France, brilliant. Right? I grew up watching Tour de France on Eurosport. I watched it yesterday on Abu Dhabi TV. It took me about 25 minutes to find where I could watch it. Then download the app, log into my account. There are about 60, 65 streaming apps in the region. Sharjah have one called Mariah. Kuwait have one. There's Shofa, there's Watch It, there's loads, right? And production people, I've sat in closed door round tables, government production conversations, and people will tell me there's only one streaming service in the region who will pay money, right? Shaheds or whatever, because Netflix don't really pay much in the region. They don't have an office here or whatever. But there isn't one. There's 65. But where's the economics around it? So some of these things. But going back to the point around media will always converge. It's not a zero-sum game. That's just economics. That's just open free market, and that's beautiful. That's actually great. You have some winners, losers. You have opportunities to consolidate. You have different strategies. You have one country doing one thing, another doing the other, and that's fine. Why phrase the question, say, why hasn't there been one? Well, so what? In the US, there was always fragmentation. There's always consolidation. The amount of times that Warner Brothers Discovery, CNN has changed hands, there's mergers all the time. There's things going through courts at the moment with Skydance and Paramount. There's all the time. Media, and that's the excitement of media. These kind of Sun Valley sort of deal making and all these sitcoms and satirical stuff, built around media and control. It's always evolving. There's one book written just about Rupert Murdoch's bankrupt family trying to acquire the Wall Street Journal. It's never changing, right? The benevolent billionaire stories buying these old newspapers. It always evolves. So, and I think we have that in this region as well. It's just not the same. Are we trying to do a monopolistic control of the media in the region? No, because that would be naive, and also why would you want to do that? But can we be? When I say modern media company of choice, it's like saying apparel company of choice. I want people to choose us because they prefer the consumption of it. Do I mean it needs to be the biggest and the best? No. And how we've decided to do it is not one pan-Arab company. We didn't create Lovin Arabia. Even SMASHI business at the moment is focused very much on the Gulf, the modern Gulf states, the startup environment here. It doesn't fully cover, it's not even in Arabic anymore, mainly. So, but Lovin, like the Lovin approach is supposed to be indigenous and local. It's supposed to be, and it is, you know, the people that create the content in Baghdad or Muscat or Cairo grew up there, or at least are from the country. And I think that's one way to do pan-Arab, is this sort of, whatever way you want to call it, but this sort of regional, local approach. You know, Al Jazeera isn't available in Egypt. NBC, when they've had issues in Iraq, Todd, the streaming service for beIN, isn't available in Saudi Arabia. So what does pan-Arab media, like, you know, what's the intention? Like, you know, do we want to have the same content across the 400 million minds? No, like that's not what we're trying to do. So I think if someone tries to do that, they're going to fall on many traps.
We took this digression. You were talking about identifying your cohort. I'm a founder of this new fledgling media company. What steps can I take to actually identify the audience or the cohort that I need to build content for?
You know, you could do lots of traditional business research steps.
Okay.
You could do.
They still work?
Sorry?
They still work, the traditional steps?
Well, yeah, in a digital form, potentially they do. Like market research, potentially they do. Surveys, anecdotal, qualitative, potentially they do. And maybe they don't, and maybe it's gut, and maybe if you get all that right, you'll still get the medium wrong. And it's just my way of thinking. Like, I might be wrong on this, but why have some media companies come and go, startups here? Why have some not entered, like BuzzFeed and others? Is it because there isn't a young cohort in this region like there was where they were? Is it because you know, if we take a Modify, for example, a brand that launched recently here, the thesis is perfect, right? Business, emerging markets, very much like what we do. And you know, digital long form podcasts, you know, and then also digital social short form. There's one that launched recently called Lawania, an Arabic youth platform, a bit like Blinks. But, you know, is there an audience for it? Yes. Like, it's hard to argue that there isn't. And then is it reaching the audience right now? Maybe some of them need to grow a little bit. But how do you reach the audience? Do you do better storytelling? Do you do better distribution? Do you do more marketing? And then if you get all those things right, is the unit economics cost of the ingredients, the content, going to result in a business model that the internet in the region wants to pay you for? And I think there's a lot of question marks around a lot of that being. I don't think a lot of that is yes. But going back to the pure question of, like, you know, what's the thesis of what are you trying to achieve with No Time?
It's not for no time. It's a company that's going to be just like
Lovin. Sorry,
yeah, it's going to be just
in
like
this
Lovin.
experiment. So if we think of Lovin, okay, so do I think that there's a demographic in a city that wants to consume content? I don't need to go much further than I should have stayed in the zone. Sorry, but I like how I asked the question. So we when we're thinking of market entry, there was someone, a consultant, or on the board before, and they said, why would you do Lovin Dubai in Jordan? There's nothing happening there. Oh, cool, but there's X million people, they're online, they have smartphones, and 4 million of them use Instagram. That's enough. For me, that's enough. In terms of, is there an audience? There are people getting out of bed every day, having relationships, falling in love, falling out of love, going to school, making shows, right? That's enough. That's enough. Like literally that's enough. Then, so in terms of research, is there cohort for Lovin Amman? Of course there is. Of course there is. Right? I don't even need anything else. Like that's it. You know, like there are 92 million people in Iran. Can I do Lovin in Tehran? Of course I can. Can I do Lovin Kabul in Afghanistan under the Taliban? Of course I can. Of course, 100%. You know, in terms of audience, yes. With our media guidelines and with our view and keeping people safe, of course we can. Now, then what mediums and what business models, etc. You know, we launched Lovin Saudi, Bil Arabi, and we went back and forth. And then now we have Lovin Riyadh, Lovin Jeddah, and we have people in the office over there, mostly Saudi nationals, and they always tell me, Rich, it doesn't work. What works? It's not the same as Dubai. I'm like, cool, but what do you mean it's not the same? Like passion points, nostalgia, emotion, stories, people, telling local stories is the same. Like this pretext is the same. And when we launched in Egypt, we opened an office there in 2021 for tech and for Arabic content, for business. And then 2021, when we launched Lovin Cairo, for the first year, the content didn't find an audience. And they told me it's because it's not the same. And then they got it right themselves. It wasn't me, they got it right.
So do you just try, this is a trial and error, it's just brute force different types of content, see what works, and then you start shaping it based on the response you're getting?
No, it's the same content. It's the same idea. It's like, it's the same, it's local news and lifestyle, it's utility, it's information, it's curating a world of noise. Like when we wake up in the morning, what were we WhatsApping each other about? How do you put that as a media? How do you tell the story that other media isn't doing? Like, and in Saudi, it might have been on Snapchat, or in Egypt, it might be on Facebook groups. How do you tell the story in a way like what's zeitgeisty, right? And Egyptians know zeitgeisty now is the price of salt in Sahel, or Katafumi, the new song that El Hadaba Amir Diab launched this summer. That's zeitgeisty. And they'll tell me that's not the same as Dubai. I know it's not. I know Dubai people, right? Dubai people, 600,000 are Egyptian, but of 10 million here, but there's 1 million Filipinos, there's 1 million this, there's 25,000 people from, from a European country, there's 50,000 people from the US, there's 250,000 people from South Africa, there's 250,000 people from Lebanon. Cool. Do they all care about Amr Diab's latest song? No, then don't post it. So but don't tell me it's not the same. Don't tell me that Saudis aren't funny. Don't tell me that there's a show that 500,000 Saudis, there's a movie this week that 500,000 Saudis paid 50 riyal and walked into a cinema in the middle of the summer and watched. What's the name of it? Right. So if you don't know the answer to that, then that's why Lovin Riyadh is needed. Because the culture that's coming out of that, Saudis want to watch that this summer ahead of Superman, Fantastic Four, F1. They want to watch this movie. So when you ask about like what data, that's the data. But how do I know? Because there's 35 million people in the country, 25 million Saudi nationals. Smartphone penetration is really high. Most of them are on TikTok now, not Snap. And there's 8 or 9 million people in Riyadh. So when my Saudi office told me, Rich, we need to keep Lovin Saudi and Lovin Riyadh different, I was like, why? Oh, different languages. I don't care about language. I care about stories, right? So I have this now, I kept on, go back to the force thing or whatever, but I kept on telling everyone who comes to the company, I kept on writing emails, one Lovin in Saudi, one voice, different language, but the same. If I'm living in Riyadh, I'm living in Riyadh. Doesn't matter if I'm Irish, if I'm from Germany, or if I'm from Saudi. Doesn't matter. I'm living in Riyadh. So the same. I can know the story of that city, and that's what worked with Lovin Dubai. That's why Lovin Dubai did better than others, because of that. Literally because of that. And we need to get that right in every place we go, in terms of audience, in terms of cohort, now where we distribute it and how we make money off it, other problems again, other questions again.
let's zoom in on this. I think this is very interesting. This horizontal framework that we've established for Lovin, how much of that is just plug and play? How much can I just take this template and apply it in different cities? This is an expansion of what you were just talking about. What can I keep and that will work in every city, and what do I have to change or tweak per city?
We franchised Lovin Dubai from Lovin Dublin, and then we bought out of it, and we own the IP now. We don't pay any royalties. It works better economically. We tried to do a JV model, and then because I didn't think the franchise model worked, how you phrase that question in the plug and play, it's like, can this be a franchise like McDonald's, and can you have the same size straw in every city, and then change the sauce and change the one of your hero products, but basically it's the same thing, right? Like, you still have a burger, you still have fries, it's still fast food and whatever. So yes, to a degree, there's a bit of that, but we're not the same as a franchise. We can't really do the same size straw. We can't really. So what we have to do is let people be creative, let people on the ground tell these stories, and try and somehow give them the digital framework, give them the legal protection, have the licensing, have the business models, have the internet thing. Like, how do we approach podcasts? Okay, we've decided not to do episode drops like this. As Lovin Dubai, that's what we decided. Our podcast strategy was daily, fast. So play a different game than other people. And now we have 35 shows. Most of them go out daily. We use AI. The average, they're 5 minutes long. And we get 2 million downloads on Podio. So that's our approach. Now, if I asked every office to come up with original show idea, they would. But it's too subjective. It's too opinionated. And they would come to work and they go, I want to launch a new show, right? Just like if you've got a Zuma or whatever, if you've got a restaurant that isn't McDonald's but needs to be localized, you're going to localize it a bit. I don't know if Zuma is the right reference, but you're going to have different menus in each country. So that's what we do. But we don't say, hey, if I have McDonald's Riyadh, I'm going to not sell fries. I think that people want high-end food in this country, so I'm not going to do fast food. We don't do that. So we have some guidelines around. We say we're non-scripted. We don't do originals. We do fast social. We build our audience revenue. We monetize against that audience. So on some level, again, with the sub-brand approach, going back to marketing, Lovin, that logo stays the same. And then the Lovin Dubai, Lovin Riyadh has a relationship with the parent in terms of brand identity and guidelines and playbook and daily publishing. But then the bit that needs to change is that local story, that Egypt story for Sahel and Amr Diab, that Saudi story for Al Zafra, or whatever the movie is, and the talk points in Dubai this summer, which might be any given week there's something else, but it might be to do with humidity, it might be to do with viral influencers or trends or things like that, and travel. Like travel, even though there's a lot of people in the city, people's travel stories are quite pertinent this summer.
The content will change and will be different depending on the place you're setting up in. But so the core philosophy stays the same of the umbrella brand. Let's go for some specific cities. Let's say I'm setting up in Riyadh, in Saudi, in Bahrain, maybe Cairo, Egypt, and Dubai. So I'm giving you 4 case studies. Apart from the sauce changing, are there any different or unique challenges that I might face when I'm setting up these media companies that are just specific to each of these places?
Yes. Getting a license, a business license in Egypt, the rules around it are a little different to anywhere. Some countries facilitate, like Bahrain, like you have to look at the sort of sectors and the facilitation of registration and setup, the bank accounts and all that sort of thing. That's any sector. That's not just media. And then media guidelines and ownership laws are different in different countries. And it's not just those 4 cities or countries. But like without going too granular, like there's nothing in any of those 4 examples. Generally, it's the same. Generally, you get a license, you follow labor law, and in some countries you get a second license. So you get a business operations license that allows you to have like a CR or a trade license. In some of those countries, VAT, So some of the basic things. And then there's a second regulatory, like in fintech or whatever, for media, there's a second body. In Saudi, it's called GAMR now. And in UAE, it's called MRO. These have changed, these acronyms. But generally, they issue a second license to you. And even in UAE, it's evolving even further, which basically means any publisher or content creator is under the same bucket now. Whether they have a license or not, they still fall under that law. So some of those, you're too small as a page now. If we talk about how people talk about media, and I've opened a page, meaning Instagram. People don't even bother to ask you for a license. But when you get sort of relatively big, and when you're seen as like a newspaper, even though you might just have a page, then you sort of cross their radar more. And then the regulator might like get in touch, and then they would say, hey, you need this extra license. This is how we're going to help you get it. And then that's sort of evolution. And that's kind of like, in a positive sense, that's great. Like that's kind of a regulatory moat. That kind of gives you the regulatory approval that the new page or the incumbent, or you who's setting up exactly like Lovin, might take a bit longer to get. And then this is the view of like this sort of long term. This is why the Augustus Media like framework of having regulatory license in each country, having people on the ground, having business licenses, having bank accounts, like even in a digital world, like operating like this allows us to compete with Lovin Riyadh against Saudi media, or with Saudi media, or in Bahrain, or in Cairo, or in Dubai.
Is there a cultural moat of any sort? Is there a difference in the way they consume content or the type of content they might respond to, or that's largely similar?
No, it's definitely different, but they're in a Lovin brand, in the Lovin lens, there's emotional trigger points, passion points that are consistent, like nostalgia. If you grew up in those 4 cities, depending on what nationality you are, but just for the sake of argument, say in the UAE you're an immigrant or an expat, whichever, I prefer the words immigrant. But if I'm a non-national, I grew up in UAE, and I'm Egyptian or I'm Bahraini or I'm Saudi, then if I talk about nostalgia, the stories I can talk to that person can be a bit different, depending on what festivities they celebrated, depending on what culture or comics they consumed, what sweets they consumed. I can tell different nostalgia stories, but the same listicle works. The top 12 chocolates that you remember growing up in Riyadh, a Riyadhi kid, irrespective of nationality, will do that. Again, like national brands, people like Emirates, people like in Egypt, they like now Balaban or something, or in Saudi, they might like Saudia or Al Marai or any of these brands, right? Or Gulf Air or Bahraini brands, like even some brands who weren't even Bahraini, who people would have liked growing up, like Zain Telco and things like that. So it just sort of depends, but Telco. And then, so then you play into that, and then you play into heroes and football players and singers and music, but it's the same rules. And then, crown princes, we have a crown prince in Dubai, he's very popular, and a sheikh, and same in Saudi, right? The king's very popular, and then the crown prince as well. But they're not the same crown prince, right? Like they're not the same people. But the same rules apply. In other words, the same sort of like interest in people applies. So but the stories are different. The culture and the music is different, but that sort of playbook of local news and local media consumption is the same.
What's highest priority when I'm starting a media company? And just to make this fun, I'm only going to allow you to pick one of these 3 options. Should I focus more on the content? If there's a higher volume of content, good quality content, that's going to bring an audience, that's going to bring revenue. I can then invest in the team and the technology. That's 1. 2, do I invest in the team itself or the technology? If I have a good team, they can produce the content. The cycle starts from there. If I have a good platform, website, apps, branding, aesthetic, then the cycle starts there. Or 3, should I just invest in branding, awareness, marketing? Of course, that's going to be married with some content, of course, but the focus is on just building an audience. And once you have that audience, you have leverage. And from that point, the revenue starts trickling in. Then I can invest in a team. Then I can start increasing the amount of content. Where should I put the highest amount of attention and resources to? Assuming I have limited amount of resources, which is the most likely scenario for any startup.
Easy. Not the last two.
Okay.
Stay away from them. Don't worry about the team. Don't worry about the marketing. I don't even mean the highest resource. Don't worry about them at all. And then adapt the first one, content, but context. If you get the context right, you have a home run, no matter what. In terms of attention, in terms of people knowing that you hit home. In the US media this week, they're talking about a media brand called the Free Press. A lady called, I thought it was a guy first, a lady called Barry Weiss. And she's created a brand that now is super highly valued. No one knows about it except in the US, in a certain sort of conservative, pro-Israel environment. And that's what she did. And it works because she got the content context right. We got Lovin Dubai right from day one, content and context. That's sort of, the first article is why Dubai needs Lovin Dubai. It was like, it was in the name. It just said it and we lived up to it. And when journalists said negative stuff about the city, we defended the city. We're like, you know nothing. We played to the crowds, you know? And SMASHI Business does the same thing. It's got content, but context. You know, people will say, you know, you're pro this, you're pro that. We're not. We just want heroes from here. We just want, like, why are they always Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos? Like, you know, like even if this region isn't the new Silicon Valley, in a contextual world, we can have people we know here. So it's the content and the context. And that's why SMASHI Business on Instagram has 24 million impressions in 30 days with like 2 journalists. Like it's not about team. And I went through, I hired the best journalists. I hired the best team. I went through all that. I had all the media partnerships, spent all the money on marketing. Doesn't matter. Does not matter at all. Unless you have the context and the context, I call it the media lens. So you need to nail that. When I see new pages or new things launching, if that doesn't smell right, if the content and the context isn't there, good luck. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they bring in. It doesn't matter how much marketing they have. It doesn't matter how deep their pockets is. They don't stand a chance. They don't. And, if I'm giving away secrets here, or if they're listening, that's just the way it is. Because even with that knowledge, they'll still make mistakes. They'll still think it's the team, and they'll still think it's marketing. They still think it's billboards to Shakespeare Road. They still think it's Facebook ads, and they hire more team, and more team is more opinions. And it's like, oh, we need to do this. We need to do this. Oh, we need shows. Oh, we're not as big as Lovin Dubai because we don't do that. Like, if you don't have the context and the content right, if you're not speaking to an idea, a theme, if you're not hitting something that hits, there's no reason for you to exist. And if there's no reason for you to exist, then you can't make money. Like, you have no audience, so you have nothing to sell. You know, so again, going back to an earlier question about why there wasn't media in other parts, there was a lot of pan-Arab media from Dubai. There were publishers, media companies 15 years before us. Dubai Media City and Internet City were 2002 onwards, and we started in 2015. Time Out Dubai was 15 years before us, but Time Out Riyadh was 5 years after us. Or 4 years after us. We started in 2017. So I think what we sort of did back then was we got into these countries early, and when we bought out of the license or whatever. But and again, because if I don't get the context or the content right, if my Lovin pages aren't not only saying that people are watching this movie, 500,000 Saudi nationals in 10 days, that will be 2 or 3 million. That's 10% of the whole country. That means 10% of the whole country are talking at night, at home, in the cafes about one topic. And if you don't know what that is, then it doesn't matter what team you have, doesn't matter what marketing you have, you're not relevant.
That makes it easy. The content and the context, that drives everything. Let's give away more trade secrets. What KPIs are you measuring for a brand like Lovin? What are the metrics for success? Are you tracking impressions, engagements, video views, page visits, conversions, the number of times the call to action has been implemented successfully, or cultural impact? What would be a metric for success if I'm starting a media company like this?
Revenue.
Okay.
Revenue. The rest also doesn't matter, because you can measure everything, but you can't chase the other things. If you chase one, you can measure everything and you can have goals around it. But if you chase one audience metric, it leads you down a path that is misguided. I like how you said clickbait earlier. Clickbait generally refers to website traffic, like clicking through. If we chased web traffic, we wouldn't be growing. Because the audience consumption of websites changed. We're not on desktops, we're on apps. You can't get clickbait onto apps. Then how do you get, so your metrics constantly change. We measure everything. We have a few hero guidelines, like I want to get from 17 million followers to 20 million followers by the end of the year on 250 social channels. I want to go from about 140,000 email subscribers to 500,000. I want to go from 2 million monthly downloads of podcasts to 10 million. I want to go from 1,000 SMASHI sports subscribers to 5,000. I want to go from, about 1 billion Instagram impressions a month to 2 billion. Yes, sure, all of those things. But the one common denominator, the one factor there is audience, is revenue. Like it's going back to, if I have a restaurant, if I'm making content in the way that I'm making food, it doesn't really matter about qualitative metrics. It doesn't matter about how many people like my burger. Like if I said 10 million people eat my burger in Saudi a week, okay, but what if they don't pay for it? So you can have these metrics in content. In burger industry, usually it's perceived that they pay for it, right? But in digital economics and media, it's any of those metrics that you said, you're not actually getting paid for it. You're not getting paid for the 10 million video views per se. So you have to have a business model that plays into that. So when I look at the amount of metrics that we put out a month, the amount of food we put out a month, the only way of me measuring it's working is how much did my burger sell for, not how many people ate my burgers.
But there are no metrics that are strongly correlated with revenue. They found to maximize revenue.
No. In 2018, we had, 2017, we had 18 million page views. 2018, we had 12 million page views. Our revenue grew by 30%. Okay. There is no correlation. There is no correlation. Like, you could draw correlation on some years in terms of video consumption, but actually, again, it's misleading and it's a dangerous step. And also, it creates false incentives. It gets you in trouble, right? There's a Hulk Hogan passed away last night. He was 71. He's part of a famous legal case with Peter Thiel against Gawker about a sex tape in the US, and Gawker's journalists who published that sex tape, they were incentivized by page views. They would get more money by page views. And eventually it led to the shutting down of the business when they lost the legal case. So that's why it's a risk. So going back to the point, if your business model is there, then you can qualitatively chase those other metrics, which are you creating context and content that works? If we're generating revenue, then I can continue to pay staff in Saudi Arabia to tell stories about the movie that happened, or maybe one day create that movie.
Let's zoom in on revenue. What's the breakdown like? How would a brand like Lovin break it between, let's say, sponsorships, branded content, donations, merchandise, subscriptions? What would the revenue breakdown look like for a brand?
But 80-90% is branded content. The highest of audience revenue, and I'll explain what that is, was 30%. It's now down to about 10%. And then the third bucket is direct to consumer. And then everything's bundled into those three buckets to make it simple. So branded content is anything that we make for a client and sell against our audience, or if they give us an asset and we put it against our audience. So you need people. you need resources, you need people running around the city. So it's capped. The scalability of it is capped. You can have a 20, 30% margin on it, but it's like an agency. Audience revenue is a little bit more uncapped, but you have to have ad tech against it. So on YouTube, you can have 50% rev share. Snapchat, you can make audience revenue. Your website, you can have banner ads. You can have programmatic. You can have affiliate. If someone clicks on an article and buys a shoe on AAP, Amazon affiliate, you can make revenue. Anything like that doesn't need a salesperson. If you have the right ad tech set up, if you cross that threshold of monetization for YouTube partner program, you don't need a salesperson for brand deals. So that's about 20% of our revenue, right? It's not that high. It should be higher. We're constantly trying to get higher. And new mediums create new audience revenue, like podcasts can have audience revenue. Podio are selling ads. Emirates ads are running against the Lovin Dubai show. Emirates don't know that. They're doing audience buy. They're not buying directly with us. Our sales team isn't selling it to them. But we're still monetizing our ads. Very, very low base, a few $100 a month, but in a growing region, emerging market and growing area. Same with CTV. Connected TV advertising, streaming. This is the next space. I'm more interested in this than I am in traditional internet media of page views and traffic. So that's audience revenue. And then the third one is direct to consumer. You obviously research, if you're launching Lovin Dubai, we have a donate button because we don't have a subscribe button, right? Like we don't say it's a fun journalism, but we have a donate button. No one does it. No one pays us money. We have a merchandise. No one buys the Lovin merch. Pretty much. And on subscription on SMASHI, about 1,000 people pay 18 dirhams a month. And that gets higher when the season's on. We do the local sports. So that bucket of revenue is small, but it's intentional. It's media. It's not events. It's not opening cafes. It's intentional in media. And we're always trying to evolve it. Going back to the people and marketing, could we add to that potentially? But, I do see it as an opportunity. And then, you can look at other things like data, maybe different types of events things in the future. But the business then is structured around those three revenue buckets.
Does it change per Lovin brand? Maybe Lovin Dubai is the cash cow that funds a lot of the other ventures. But I'm assuming you haven't created Lovin Palestine for revenue. There's maybe a higher purpose that you're trying to serve. There may be cultural impact or something else.
No, actually, so I get the context. I don't want to sound defensive on it, but when we launched, we were in two minds about launching what to call that news channel. There were, when we launched Lovin Palestine in early 2023, there were 2.2 million people in Gaza, and the early journalists that worked on the platform then were based there. And our thesis was that where's the local news for 2.2 million people? Because Western media has a perception of an area, but there's still people who get out of bed, who go to the beach, who deal with, bad air conditioning, and who apply for jobs, and who do startups and have relationships and break up and marriage and all this sort of stuff, and who celebrate beautiful celebrated traditions. So that's irrespective of politics and opinion and ideologies. Like, there was a thesis there that suited our sort of pan-Arab, Arab countries. Now, in terms of the name Palestine over Gaza, we did go with Palestine, just like, we went for Lovin Bahrain instead of Lovin Manama. Like, sometimes we do go for, it's Kuwait, but is it Kuwait City? Like, so sometimes we do go for that. And that's really why we went for that. Palestine's obviously a tricky one, in terms of like, should we have picked Lovin Ramallah? Ramallah has 40,000 people living in Ramallah. So that's why we went with Gaza. That's why our journalists are there as opposed to the West Bank, because the populace, now that's changed, sadly. But, in terms of, no, like, and I still think, I naively, like I'm Irish, I naively believe in a two-state, like a populace, and I maybe naively believe in this, not out of hope and not out of any favoritism, just because I understand the region and I understand demographics and I understand this world era of nationalism that we lived in. Like, nation states a new thing, So I do think, maybe naively, that there will be a Palestinian state, President Macron maybe says that he's announcing it in September, but like I naively do think so. No, there isn't a higher purpose other than the Augustus Media purpose of telling stories from this world, which has nothing to do with any particular country. But yes, I do think, and like if you push me further, I could say that we probably might have other brands in the Levant region. However, again, the thesis is that the unit economics of each country, we can make it work. Now, do I think that we'll do $15 million in revenue this year, inshallah, and we will eventually grow to 30 million, to $25-30 million over a sort of a 5-8 year period. I think the majority of that revenue will come from the modern Gulf states, based on our office, based on economics, based on the way it is. Do I think that the Levant region, when I was in this region originally, our Lebanese office managed $20 million of media, and our both offices in Saudi managed 100 million. Do I think that ratio of 5-1 between Saudi and Lebanon is going to be Augustus Media? No, of course I don't. Of course I think the Saudi market will generate more revenue than the Lebanese market. But do I think that Lovin Beirut can't be a viable, profitable entity with 5 or 6 staff generating revenue over the summer to do advertising and telling stories? Of course I do. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. Our mission is to tell inspiring stories, but we're a business. I'm not doing this for higher purpose. It's anyone who joins this company and wants to do activism or higher purpose, it's not the place for them. You're not coming. There are other pages online that do things for certain ideologies, certain things. That's not us. That's not Lovin. Lovin is a media company where graduates if there was a university left in Gaza, could come and study and practice a podcast like the Palestinian radio station 100 years ago. Like that's what should be there, and that what naively potentially will be there. And if it's not there, it might be elsewhere. However, I do think the way that things are going, the Gulf region, the modern Gulf states, is where the majority of our revenue will come from. However, there is a halo effect of having inspiring stories and audience from places that benefit the rest of the brand. If you've got, if we don't have Lovin Casablanca activated in the next 2 or 3 years, and that's the city that we've picked from Morocco, if we don't have that activated, we're going to miss the World Cup and the stories around that. So, and similarly with Baghdad, if we don't really have Baghdad activated and Damascus, we're going to miss lots of stories. So the stories will have the content and context, and they'll have that halo effect on the brand. And some of these cities have amazing stories, past and present.
I'm very glad you have brands like Lovin Palestine or Lovin Baghdad or Lovin Casablanca. They would be positive forces in the world. There is a stereotype concerning laws and regulations around media companies in the region and freedom of speech and freedom of press in general. There is a belief that there are red lines around what you can say, what you cannot say. And even if there are no official laws or regulations, there's a belief that there might be unspoken, unofficial, cultural red lines or no-go zones. Is that true? And if it's true, as a founder of a modern media company, how do I navigate that?
So is there direct censorship on us? No. Does the First Amendment in the US apply in 200 countries around the world? No. And if I'm asking this question and I don't understand that, I'm not very knowledgeable in terms of the region and in terms of the world, right? So I mean that's the basis of it. Everything after that is how one applies a media company in this region, and that can depend. How does a newspaper or how does a streaming service or a TV channel operate? Like, would this question come up if I was a sports media company? or if I was a kids programming, or if I was, making documentaries around wildlife, would this question come up? So the media ecosystem is quite wide, and influencers. If I'm doing content around food, does this question necessarily come up? So the media ecosystem can be very wide, right? Like the global social networks are here. They take about $4 to $5 billion revenue of advertising, all served against content consumed in the region. They take it out. ByteDance, Meta, they line their pockets and they are listed elsewhere, and they don't invest properly in the region. And but there's media here. So it just depends. Now, then you just need to decide where you are in the wider ecosystem. Like what we've decided is that our guidelines around media, I think it is written. Now, the constitutions aren't as clear, but the constitutions everywhere are linked to Islam and the Prophet, peace be upon him. So you don't, you pay respect to that. And then also defamation. In the context of this region, why would one defame one person in terms of harm their chance to earn a living? So we don't do that. And if other people don't understand that, then they're not well placed to do media in the region. And if one believes that journalism should hold people to account, that's an okay ideology. It's just not mine. I believe the law should hold people to account. I believe journalists and content creators could tell stories, either ones that exist or shed light on information that doesn't exist, without becoming the law. So to that degree, then you don't say that if you launch a media company, you don't defame that media company. You don't say that media company won't get it right. You don't defame it. And then the last thing is you respect the leadership, just like you respect your parents, because why not? Like, why not? If you for me, it's just logical. For me, it's like if I'm trying to build a media business here, then I need a country that works. I need governance. I need regulation. So why would I not respect it? Why would I want to tear it down? Why would I want corruption to thrive? Why would I want chaos? I don't. I want stability. I want regulation. I want leadership. So, you can see a lot of how I answer these questions is maybe it's how my mind works. It's in threes, whether it's the revenue buckets or the media guidelines. But when you've got 120 staff in 11 countries, you need to speak clearly and you need to digest it down and you need to go, this is what we're doing, right? And anytime I've had interviews, I remember speaking to a media journalist in the US with a well-known title, and he was asking me these questions. I spent 20, 30 minutes of going, why? Because he thought I was Western or whatever, and I am, I'm Irish Muslim, but he thought well, why are you doing it in that region? You can't do media over there. You can't. And then I was just like, why am I wasting my time? I don't have any foreign owners to that degree. I don't have to. I don't need to list there. I don't need advertising revenue from there. So why do I even, why do I need to change your view? It's not my job. If you're going to hold that view, fine. So I just stopped chasing that media interview attention because I just don't care.
Yeah, these are great insights. Honestly, this is like a starting your own media company 101 masterclass. So I'm loving all these insights you're giving me. Let's bring SMASHI into the conversation. If I want to start a content platform that's just like SMASHI, let's create the lay of the land. Let's create all the pieces I need first. The content, the audience, the platform, the team. What all do I need before I launch this platform out?
Well, you don't do what I did. Was you try and build a streaming service, and you try and build the tech, and you try and you don't build a social network. You don't build a podcast platform. You don't build what else do we consume media? You don't build something. What you do is you start with the content and the context, and you try and get it right. And I made mistakes on that. I thought SMASHI would live as a brand, a pan-Arab brand. and it would be business but not. And then I realized that that's wrong because Lovin Arabia wouldn't worked. It could, but I don't think it would have, and we're not doing it. Just why I don't think Buzzfeed Arabia would have worked. Just like Huffington Post Arabic came and shut down. It shut down. And so I don't think Pan-Arab media works. Like Stepfeed didn't work, Pan-Arab, the story, and Ray's a good friend. But this Pan-Arab media didn't work. So the SMASHI thing didn't work in terms of streaming service didn't work. SMASHI as one Pan-Arab story didn't work. What worked for SMASHI was SMASHI business with a startup things from the Gulf and Egypt and Saudi and here, right? Where the investment is happening. That's where it worked. And then that's it. And then the mediums that it worked on are on Instagram, podcast, newsletter, and, a bit of X, bit of TikTok, a bit of things like that. However, why we got 5 years into this, why we were able to survive is because we made shows on Snapchat that loosely fell under SMASHI. One called Meme Social Media, which was really Lovin Saudi in terms of the Saudi nationals who were doing Who's Crushing Social Media. But they became hit shows. They were creator-led shows. And they made us a lot of money. They made us up to $1 million a year, and 2 4-minute episodes a week. So that was able, like on the P&L on the report each month, going back to revenue, I was able to justify keep going with SMASHI. But I knew that wasn't the SMASHI that I wanted. Now, the other thing that I changed, as well as it's not a streaming service, although we have subscribers and they're streaming, just like there's a Lovin app, it's more of a content lens. Like Lovin Dubai is a content platform. People call it a page, but it's content. And so is SMASHI. Then also,
what's the difference between a streaming service and a content platform in SMASHI?
Streaming service is an e-commerce tech play. Streaming service is all about churn and lifetime value of a customer and CAC and customer acquisition costs. Streaming service is when Stars Play hired someone from marketing, they hired someone from Booking.com. Like that's what a streaming service is. They don't do originals. You've walked around this 12,000 square foot studio in Dubai Production City, 2 kilometers over the roads, you'll go to Stars Play. They don't have a studio. They're a streaming service. We're a content company.
They're more of a broker marketplace for content.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And and that's part of the ecosystem. And they get tech really good. And their revenues have trebled, I think, when they went on to Etisalat. They've done a great job. They went into sports. They do some originals, but they're with production companies. So now we can be a content company and we can have a streaming tech as we do, like the SMASHI app. We have 12 developers in Egypt. We want to be available on these smart TV devices and streaming services in cars and airplanes, of course. But going back to the content and the context, SMASHI worked. Another thing that I realized about business and media business and about media lenses is you need to, going back to this mass media thing, as soon as I brought SMASHI closer to Lovin, it made a lot more sense. Being different, but as soon as I realized that like SMASHI business is mainstream consumer media, like Arabian Business and Bloomberg are consumer media, right? Whereas there are titles in this region that are industry media, like Construction Weekly or Hoteliers Magazine or Condé Nast Travel, right? So that would be more like if I'm doing a press release and I want to get B2B, if I'm a hotel on the Palm and I have a new GM, I can get picked up by some industry media, right? But SMASHI would be more interested on consumer business stories about maybe the revenue or the makeup of what's happening on the Palm in a business context, as opposed to who the GM is. So there's just kind of layers there. And going back to your niche thing, like you could have an industry-focused media podcast, knowing that you're going to cap at 10, 15,000 listeners, depending on what city you're in, right? But you could have a mass media, maybe like a consumer business platform that has a bit of advertising, a bit of hospitality, a bit of this, a bit of tech, a bit of startup. So when we sort of evolved this and communicated it and documented it, then it made a lot more sense. And then when we said, okay, instead of trying to do 13 verticals at once, we'll bring it back. And like, for example, wellness is a big topic globally, right? From supplements to hotels to travel, right? But SMASHI Health was, if I designed SMASHI Health, I might want to know who the head doctor is in Mediclinic in Parkview, right? I might want to know this. So SMASHI Health is the wrong word. Like SMASHI Hospitality or SMASHI, what was the other one that we renamed? Like it's now SMASHI Food, it's now SMASHI Wellness, right? Again, the environment, Bloomberg have green on X. And, if you're looking at EO2 emissions and carbon neutral statistics, you're going to get that from a Bloomberg environment. But there's a gap in consumer media around the environment. Instead of knowing the rising water levels, there can be environmental stories with a lady called Mary standing in her garden in Wisconsin showing the floods this year versus last year, because that's consumer media, because that's showing the environmental change from the consumer's eyes. Like wellness, we all have wellness stories. So what's the wellness story around media? So these are some of the things, like Vogue isn't necessarily the business of fashion, but there is a level of, if I read it every week, I'm going to know who the designers are. But kind of mostly I'm reading it because I want to buy the clothing item, right? I want it it's kind of consumer media. Like Architects Digest have a great YouTube channel that shows inside houses. Now, Architects Digest might sound like it's what the architect might read in terms of learning, but really, if they want to know about their profession, they need to get the latest architect's thesis from Harvard or whatever, right? If there's a level above, I don't know what it is, but the kind of Harvard Business Review for architects or the Science Journal or whatever. But as a consumer level, SMASHI Style can do in text, audio, and video in the region what Vogue has done in a Condé Nast era. And SMASHI Home can, in theory, do what Architects Digest does. It can show the colorful, it can inspire interiors in the region for the consumer who's got a 10,000 dirham budget to redesign their living room.
Let's dive into the economics of it. How do I make a content platform economically viable? How much would it cost to produce my own content, license content? And then how do I decide how much to charge every viewer per month, or whether I want to run ads and how much to charge for those ads, or whether I want to run a hybrid model between membership and ads?
To find out this answer, you need to subscribe. Look, like there's no fixed thing. It's like, I think I've touched on a lot of like how we view it with revenue models and buckets. Ultimately, if you're generating revenue that's paying for the costs of the business, then it's working. Ultimately, if you're not, you're not. So how do you price it? Everything's different. There are industry standards, like influencers have cost for posts. You kind of work around that if you're paying for Instagram posts, or, we used to sell a lot of sponsored articles. Banner ads have CPM prices. CTV have CPM prices. Audio ads have general industry benchmarks. There's a lot of white papers. IAB, as an internet advertising bureau, produces a lot of white papers. We served on the board of that, and we're still a member. So there's a lot of pricing metrics out there. If you're setting up a restaurant, you look at your neighbor's menu to see how much, like if you're opening a coffee shop, how much you charge for coffee. Like some of it depends on the economics of the city. Going back to the point of like, will Lovin Islu work in Islamabad versus Cairo? Well, the price points can work for that city. So I think people will get that. I think you kind of, if you're starting an agency and you're doing social media content management, what do you charge for it? Some people, when something's new and when the marketer or the buyer isn't very savvy and they think that, the price point got way out. And then when the industry sort of commoditizes itself, it sort of makes things super cheap. And that's just market dynamics. That's just open market.
Just to give you some context into this question, it's been interesting to watch the evolution of streaming services, not content platforms. You can tell me whether it's the same for content platforms, but it feels like we're just back to square one. when these streaming platforms first burst onto the scene, they were attractive because they were radically different from television. You paid a fixed fee, you had access to a library of content, there was no ads, and there was no scheduled programming. I had access to all the content in one go. Now I pay a membership fee on, let's say, Netflix. They run ads in the middle of the content, Amazon Prime, they run ads, it disrupts the flow. The library is split. Well, firstly, the scheduled content, they drop episodes once a week, just like TV. And now the library is split across Netflix, ESPN, Hulu, Disney as well. So much so that there are like bundling packages now, just like cable and television. So it feels to me we have reinvented cable and television. The mode of transmission is different. Maybe there's more personalization, but we've just taken a long, expensive route to just come back to the same spot. Is that right? Was traditional television and cable the only economically viable product, and streaming services were doomed from the beginning?
We're definitely... streaming services aren't doomed. Most of them are profitable now. And not most of them, but like the model has become profitable. We're not back to the beginning. I understand the question and I understand the narrative, and a lot of it is plausible. However, consumer choice is a key thing that you need to spell out there, because some episodes do drop weekly, but the library and the programming is completely different. Like that's sort of, if you're a programmer on a cable TV, you're buying movies, right? You go to MIPCOM or you go and you do a deal with a studio, but you're only releasing that movie at any given time, right? And that's where the DVDs came in, whatever. Streaming has opened up all that. The choice is incredible. And we're not going back because of the choice. In terms of pricing, yes. Like I think I got my text yesterday, $17 a month for Netflix in the region. It started in 2016 in the region. But Netflix started in the late 90s. It was DVD mail. Streaming only happened in 2007, only came to the region in 2016. The ads model still isn't in the region. So Netflix doesn't have ads, so you're not being interrupted. They don't really do episode drops, like one show in 100 maybe does. There's a lot of movies there. The library's good. They have an international studio. The dubbing's getting better. The devices where we can watch it is better. They have a download feature. You can take it on a plane. Like this sort of convenience isn't where cable was. Appointment TV, once a week, this choice has evolved. So in terms of, some of the convergence and some of the bundling thing, yeah, but I think that's people and businesses, that's just evolution in some level. But I don't even think that's really happened. Like I can't think of a bundle in the region. There are some talks of ESPN and Disney doing bundles in the US, but like that, they haven't really run with it. You have telco, which are called MNOs. Basically, they can offer you things together, right? So if you are a subscriber, like Etisalat do have content or whatever, but generally, in this region now, if we take the top, say there's like 16, 20 million subscribers, more downloads, but if we take the top 4 or 5, you have Shahad, Stars Play, Netflix, and then a few others, Prime, a few others sort of trying in there, like Watch It in Egypt and, Yango Player making a stab and things like that. So, but if you think of those, then none of them have bundled. So yeah, and then the evolution as well, going back to the point about the linear thing, the new way in cable on streaming is called FAST, free ad-supported streaming service. So Samsung TV Plus, Lovin Dubai are going to launch a TV channel on Samsung TV Plus soon. Of the 2 million devices that are in the region, on older models, not older models, we'll be one of 20 channels that you'll be able to get on the first screen there, the first sort of square box, because we've moved to an app flicking model instead of a channel flicking model. But what's the scale of this apps? And actually the OSs, the operating systems, in Samsung cases, Tizen, or in LG have their own. Huawei power a lot of these. Huawei are in a lot of their cars. A lot of the car devices are powered by this OS. So basically, they have people vetting whether you can go into this app ecosystem or not. And if your app isn't good enough, you're not getting in. So not everyone is going to have an app in that environment. So not all streaming services are going to be there. The ones that are baked into the device, your control has a Netflix button on it or a Shahad button on it. But then the next level of that is like the viewability. So when you open this device and it doesn't have a Yango Play, at least there's an ad showing Yango Play download. But if you're SMASHI, where you're not on the device and you're not paying for the install feature, you're kind of buried. So it's going to be hard for people to find your app to download. So what do? Then do you go, okay, I have SMASHI, but I have 700 games on SMASHI Sports. So why don't I take SMASHI Sports as a fast channel and give it to Starzon, who now have fast channels, who have 2-3 million downloads, and who will give me kickback and revenue and subs, and give me a bundle just for my sports channel. Or I go to Shahad, who have, I think, 80 channels or something. So, and Lovin Dubai might be on Shahad, as well as being on the Lovin app that's buried on an OS somewhere. So yes, it's converged, but are we back to cable now?
I'm curious to see how this continues evolving. Before we wrap up, I also want to squeeze in a few questions about the founders itself, the human behind the founder. You probably interact with a lot of founders through the Fitzy Fund as well. So I'm sure you have an internal checklist of what personality traits make successful founders. You've shared in a previous interview that on multiple occasions when you used to work the entire weekend, you used to come home and used to feel lonely because you have given so much time to building these brands. Certain parts of your life might get affected, or certain relationships. Is that what it takes? Is there a price that you have to pay in terms of your social life, personal life, friends and family? Is obsession a prerequisite for actually making it in a cutthroat industry like this? Or can you survive by having a healthy balance between all of them?
How would you phrase that question if you were speaking to a professional athlete? Would you finish that narrative like a cutthroat profession like this if you were talking about football or tennis? Like, by saying is that what it takes means it's a negative. Everything compounds, effort compounds, but enjoy the journey. Like, yes, there was times where I didn't have social interactions when I would go home in the evening. Is that because I didn't put effort into it? Yes. Is that because I went to bed to get up and cycle the next morning? Yes. But is it a sacrifice on one level? Yes. But also it is intentional, and also it was, even though on some level it might be called lonely, it's also enjoyable because I might sound like a sociopath or whatever, but how enjoyable was all those times I spent in the pub? Like, really, did I really enjoy it? Or was I just getting lubricated? Was I just feeling false sense of enjoyment or whatever? Like, did I really enjoy it? Really? Why am I not doing that now? If I really long for that time, why am I not doing it? What I long for now, which is what I have, alhamdulillah, is a family to go home to, and a wife, a loving wife, and I have interactions that are close to me. But do I need? But I could have had that while I was doing this. I just didn't. But that doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice that. You can have it all. Like, you can have, but it depends what you mean by all, right? Like, you can't have everything. You can't, but you can have what's important to you. Like, you can have that feeling of whatever that is, opposite to lonely, you described it, how I described it in the past. You can have that. And it doesn't take much. I could have had that before on this journey. I was deciding on making an investment lately, and I wasn't sure. And sometimes I just pull the trigger on an email or whatever, but I wasn't sure. And I'd been away, and I was like, I'd met the founder. I was on a video call, and we were going back and forth on emails, and lawyers were looking at it. And then I was like, I need to meet him again. So I met him, and then I was like, right. And it was part of that conversation. It was like he was. I won't reveal too much because people might see when I post about what I just invested in. But But it was sort of those sort of questions were there. But then there's other people who start businesses and their partners are their rock from the start. But yeah, going back to the sport thing, do I think that footballers, 18, 19, 20, or rugby players or tennis players or cricket players need to dedicate to their vocation? Yeah. But I also believe that more young people should do that in their job, irrespective of whether they work for themselves or someone else. Right? Like I genuinely believe that things compound. And if you want to develop, if you want to learn, if you want to get good at something, it doesn't have to be on your own. You can do it in university. You can do it within an office, within a company. But that also requires sacrifice. Like if you're at an office 8 or 9 hours a day, okay, it might be 14 hours a day, but that's sacrifice, right? Because you could be training, you could be, people say giving up corporate. You could be doing influencer fit content, and then someone in 10 years' time, when you're a big influencer, or when you're something else, people might say, "Oh, did you sacrifice?" But maybe, but So it's just a different way of thinking.
There's definitely no negative connotation to it, because I've also been wrestling with this for the last 5 years. It's pretty much been obsessed with what I'm doing here and merging it with 2 jobs. And there's a case to be made for athletes, musicians, actors, that if you're obsessed with your craft, there's a higher purpose that you're serving that might give you more value in the world, more value, apart from just hanging out in the pub. Do you think the fact that you were born into a family of 6 siblings, do you think that gave you an inherent desire to maybe stand out, or give you a fire that helps you as a founder, your position in the pecking order?
Probably. I wouldn't disagree with you. Probably. I mean, all these different dynamics are definitely become part of who you are, yeah.
Okay, time for prediction. You've had a pulse on the industry for 2 decades. You worked in Ireland, London, now in the region as well. You interact with so many founders. I'm sure you have a pulse on where the industry is heading. What's the future of media going to look like? We spoke about this earlier at Parked It Aside. You brought AI into the conversation as well. Let's paint the picture. What type of media will I be consuming in 2050 or 2060? What do you think?
The majority will be digital. The 3 types of media in an AI media world is curated algorithmic machine learning. The evolution of machine learning, large language models, is AI in curating media for you from content creators in an algorithm, in an app. So that TikTok era, that personalized media, that attention, that served up stuff that you're interested in is there. The other one is the sort of served up, personalized, bespoke media that a bot or an agent will give you that exists in the world. So, hey, I want information about the Saudi Football League, information about startups in the region, and some entertainment news in my WhatsApp as bullet points or an audio file for 3 minutes tomorrow morning. Perplexity is doing something like that. That's taking up a lot of share. They need to license from news organizations who are real people a lot of the time and who make this content, but it's served up in a super personalized way. So that exists. The third part of it is the pure AI, where the AI makes the content. So it's the AI movie, or it's the AI social account, or it's the AI content. So it's either prompt-based or not. It's lean in or lean back. And the reason why I'm not afraid of AI is because, going back to the original question you asked about, is there a zero-sum game? No, it all fragments. There'll be a time where, in 20, 30 years' time, where 90% of media consumed will be those 3 things, but someone might want to read a book, and they can. But are people going to become millionaires from printing books? No. But so this is our view of the evolution of media consumption. I don't think content creators are going anywhere. I don't think algorithmic media consumption apps are going anywhere. And I don't think, I think we've entered into an area where AI is generating movies, and I just love it. I just think it's great.
I'll revisit this conversation in 20 years and see how much of that came true.
Of course it's going to change, but there you go. That's the date is the date.
Last 2 questions. What would you like your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
I don't want, not that I don't want to be remembered. I don't mind if I'm remembered, but it's not a goal. 8 or 9 billion people pass through this planet every 100 years or so. Why would I think I want to be remembered more than others? It's not important.
Your father used to say the harder you work now, the more you'll be rewarded later. You've been working hard for a few decades, and the rewards are not just yours, but for everyone who enjoys the content put forward by Lovin or SMASHI. There's a quote by the Roman Emperor Augustus, of all people. I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. Very poetically, I think it applies to you and the work you've done with Augustus Media and the media industry in the region in general. Last question.
Very nice of you to say. Thank you.
What is the meaning of life, Richard Fitzgerald?
I'm still on a journey. Come back to me in 20 years. Look, there's definitely something spiritual about life. We're definitely blessed to be humans on the planet. I think it's quite a personal thing, and I don't have an answer. And maybe words or language can't fully answer it. But do I feel content? Do I feel that I'm discovering that I'm present and that I'm striving to live a meaningful life? Yeah, and I think that's part of it.
What gives you meaning in life?
I don't know, just getting up every day and going about my life in a way where I feel intellectually challenged. I feel that I'm trying to do good. I'm trying to be the best version of myself for myself and for people around me. And now that I'm becoming a father soon, like that's, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother. So those things give me meaning.
Richard, if people wish to connect with you, find out more about you or Lovin or SMASHI, what is the best way to find you or your brands?
On the internet.
The internet is the place. Richard, thank you so much for this fantastic conversation. It was truly an honor for me. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Well done.